Okay, Year 10. So we are carrying on with our topic, the living world, which is part of paper 1. And in the next couple of lessons, we're going to be looking at tropical rainforests and the characteristics within them. So we're going to be focusing mostly on the climate, and we're going to be looking at climate graphs to help us do this. So by the end of this lesson, we should be able to describe the distribution of tropical rainforests around the world, understand the climate in the rainforest, and understand the characteristics of the rainforest soils, plants and animals. And this will take us a couple of lessons. So make sure, please, that when you're watching this video, if you're at home, you pause the video as we go through the tasks to allow you an opportunity to write down the notes and to draw diagrams. So here are some facts about tropical rainforests. I'm not going to read through the facts, but it might be worth you pausing the video on this slide and making a note of the facts that you didn't know about. So if you knew that the Amazon rainforest was the largest in the world, then you don't need to write that down. If you didn't know that a quarter of all of our medicines have been discovered in the tropical rainforest, that's 25%, then I would write that down. So pause the video here and write down some facts about the tropical rainforest that you didn't know about. Okay then. So worldwide, where are the tropical rainforests located? This is quite a brief map, and we're going to look at this in a little bit more detail in the next part of the lesson. But we can see here that these green regions on the map are where we find tropical rainforests. And you can see very clearly that they are found within the boundaries of the Tropic of Cancer, which is 23.5 degrees north, and the Tropic of Capricorn, which is 23.5 degrees south. And we find them within those regions, and we're going to look at why we find them there later on in this lesson. So you don't need to do anything with this slide, you just need to simply look at it, and we're going to describe it next. So what we're going to do now is describe the distribution of these tropical rainforests. So when you're describing them, you need to make sure, please, that you are including the continents. So let's start to annotate this map here. We can see that they're found in Central America. We've got them in South America. And if we were being really specific about where they were within South America, we could start to say things like the fact that we can see them mostly in North and Northwest South America, in countries like Brazil. Then we've got places in Africa, but it's generally in Central Africa. On the west coast, places such as the Congo and the Democratic Republic. Okay, and then the final section we have is here in Asia. It's generally South Asia. And you might talk about places like Indonesia, Borneo. We've got places like Fiji as some other examples. So you can go into a little bit more detail about that. And then there's some other places really that are quite small. So we've also got little sections in India, in Madagascar, and also parts of Thailand and Vietnam here. So also make sure that you include the reference to the equator, which we can see here. So they're found generally along the equator, but they're also found within the boundaries of the tropics, so the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. Okay, so pause the video here and make sure you describe the distribution of tropical rainforests. This slide here gives you an opportunity to improve your green pen, improve your work. So make sure you pause here and have a little look at what's been said before you move on to the next activity. So what I would like you to do now is we need to be aware about why the Amazon rainforest, or why tropical rainforests in general, are important. So you will need to come off this video and type into YouTube the Amazon Rainforest Top 10 Facts, and it will give you this video that you can see here. So it might be worth, during the video, making a spider diagram. And in the spider diagram, you might want to write something like, why is the tropical rainforest important? And then during the video, annotate around this spider diagram. Then once you've watched this video, you will need to come back to this YouTube video as there's some more tasks that we need to complete. Okay, so what we're going to be doing now is we're going to be looking at the climate of tropical rainforests. So we focused on where they are, we've looked at why they are important, and now we need to know about what the weather is like and what the so how much rainfall they have and the temperatures, and then we're going to look at reasons why this is the case. So when we are looking at a climate graph, they display the yearly temperatures and the precipitation for a specific location. So the average temperature is plotted with a red line, which we can see here. And then we have the rainfall being plotted with bar charts, which we can see here. So the precipitation is bar chart, and we normally colour them in blue to show rainfall. And then they are shown on the left axis, and you can see it's measured in millimetres, whereas the temperature is the line graph, normally represented in red or orange, and that is measured in degrees C. So what we're going to do now is use this information to create our own climate graph. So on this slide here, we have information about Manaus, which is in Brazil. Now, Brazil is home to the largest tropical rainforest in the world, the Amazon rainforest, so we need to know a little bit more about the climate in this location. So this slide tells us what we need to do when we are constructing a climate graph. So we don't leave gaps behind the bars, and we put crosses in the middle of the grids to show the temperatures, not on the edges like it's shown here. So they go in the middle like this, so this is correct, this is not. So let's go on to the next section and we will start to construct this together. Okay, so if we were doing this, we'd need to make sure we had a title. So each bar chart should have a title. So the bottom, we'd have months. On the left, we would have precipitation. And that's in millimetres. And then on the other side, we would have temperature. In degrees C. And then we'd need a title for our climate graph. So this would be called a climate graph for Manaus in Brazil, a tropical rainforest. So let's start to plot our information. So we're going to start with January, and it says that the rainfall was 278 millimetres. So we're going to go we're just beneath the 280 line, roughly here. I'll use a blue colour, that's silly. And then we shade in all of this bar, like that. And then the temperature for that month is 28 degrees. So then we need to look at the other axis, and we go across and plot it there. January is the same, so February is exactly the same as January. So our cross would go here, and then our rainfall would be exactly the same height. Like that. And you would go on, so on and so forth. So I'm going to very quickly plot all of the temperatures. So we then have March is still 28, April is 27, May is 28, June is 28, July 28, August is 29, September 29, October is 29, November 28, and December 28. And then you would match them up like this. Okay, now it's very clear that it's quite consistent in terms of the amount of the temperatures that they get on a yearly basis. So you would do the same thing for the rainfall to see if it is consistent or if it is quite random. Okay, so what we need to do now is describe our climate graph using these sentences. So we can see here, we still have the information about the climate graph, and now we need to pick out the most important things. So question 1 says the maximum temperature in Manaus, Brazil is. So we need to work out what the temperature is. Now, you'll have noticed that I have made a mistake. Now I'm going to change this to rainfall. And I'm going to change these ones to temperature. So this should say temp. And then you should say rainfall. So make sure you're writing these down in your book or on notes in full sentences. The maximum rainfall in Manaus, Brazil. So we're looking for the highest number of rainfall. And the one that pops out straight away to me is March, which is 300 millimetres. So that would be 300 millimetres. And I would actually go further and say in March. Now, the month that has the lowest rainfall is in August. And they only have 41 millimetres of rainfall. So we'd write 41 millimetres in August. Now, when we're working out the range, we do the biggest take away the smallest. So we do 300 take away 41, which gives us 259. So then we put 259 millimetres in that gap there. And I would like you to go on and do the same for the temperatures. So why do we find tropical rainforests in these locations? We know that they're very hot and they're very wet, but we need to know why. So you might choose to draw a sketch similar to what is on the board, or you might just want to listen and make some notes. So we know along the equator that the sun's rays are the most concentrated. So I'm just going to draw on a sun to show that. That's where the sun mostly is. So the sun's rays are most concentrated here, which means that the temperatures are extremely hot, which is why in tropical rainforests, the temperatures range from 27 to 29 degrees all year round. And that is because of its location to the sun. Now, the further away we move from the equator, the sun's rays are less concentrated, so we get colder temperatures. So if we come back to the equator where the sun's rays are more concentrated and think to our knowledge of the water cycle from science, we know that because the sun is beaming down, it's going to create the air to be very hot. So that hot air will rise. So I'm going to draw the air rising. So it rises, and then as it cools, as it gets further into the atmosphere, it will cool and condense and make clouds. So then it will rain on the equator. So that is why we have very, very high amounts of rainfall. And this is called an area of low pressure. So the pressure of the air is very low, so it rises, cools, condenses, and makes rainfall. And that is why we get lots of rain along the equator, but it's also very hot. Now, we also have air sinking, so that is what I've got on here now are camels, and the camels aren't really important at the minute. We're going to look at deserts in more detail later on in this topic, but it's just to make you aware that along the equator it's very hot and very wet because the air is rising, cooling and condensing. But along the Tropic of Cancer, which is here, and the Tropic of Capricorn, which is here, the air is sinking, so the air is very dry, and that is why we have lots of deserts happening in the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. But it's still very hot because it's still a very close proximity to the equator. So It might just be worth making some notes about why the tropical rainforests are hot and wet. It's because of the location to the sun and because it's an area of low pressure where the air rises, cools, condenses and rains. And you might want to talk about the deserts if you wish, and that's all you need to know for this lesson.